assessment was never really measuring learning, whether it's the pre-AI era or the AI era. If a machine can spit out the answers exactly as a student would, then I don't think that assessment has served its purpose.
Assessments with the technologies that are available around, one of it is Articulate. You can accelerate and amplify your process of generating questions.
But AI has made it very clear that a polished final product is no longer enough the evidence of learning.
When you pose a question to a person, you not only are testing the person, but you're also testing a question. To let the AI wave come, you don't have to really resist it that bad, either in academia and corporate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of L&D Unboxed. For decades, when we talked about learning outcomes in classrooms, in boardrooms, in training rooms, the conversation almost always circled back to one thing: the Marksheet. Scores, grades, percentages, a number that was supposed to tell us everything about what a learner knew, what they had absorbed, and whether they were ready for what came next. But here's the uncomfortable truth that educators, instructional designers, and learning leaders are now grappling with: that the number never told the whole story. And in an AI-powered world, where knowledge can be accessed instantly, where generative tools can draft answers in seconds, it tells us even less. So the topic we are exploring today is a fundamental one: assessments in the AI age, from Marksheets to meaningful intelligence. Joining us today are two people who are working at the very intersection of education, technology, and learning design. First, we have Sanskriti Rawat, former assistant professor at Prasoon University, who then pivoted to industry and now working as an instructional designer at Google for Education. Sanskriti brings a rare combination of academic rigor and real-world design thinking. With PhD research focused on AI in education, internationally published work, and hands-on experience building AI-driven curricula, gamified learning experience, and teacher training programs for higher education, she represents a generation of educators who are not just adapting to AI, but actively shaping how it gets embedded into the learning experience. Sanskriti, it's wonderful to have you today with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanusha. Thank you for inviting me to L&D Unboxed. I'm extremely happy to be here. So this is a topic to which I care about deeply and I relate to deeply, and it's the need of the hour, according to me. And I'm so looking forward to digging into it.
We also have with us Mr. Prasoon Nigam, CTO and Articulate Product Expert at Stratbeans. Prasoon brings the technology and product lens to this conversation as a person behind Stratbeans' learning technology capabilities and as a deep expert in the Articulate ecosystem. He has seen firsthand how authoring tools, AI features, and assessment designs are evolving together. His perspective on what technology can do versus what we imagine it can do keeps this conversation grounded in reality. It's great having you here with us as well, Prasoon. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Tanusha. I'm really looking forward to this discussion with Sanskriti. I think we will discuss various interesting topics, and her background of having worked in academia as well as industry. I'm really looking forward to some very good insights.
Great. So let's just quickly dive deep into the conversation. And my first conversation and my first question that I really want to start this with you is, Sanskriti. I just want to start with the core tension. Because for generations, assessment has essentially been about verifiability. Can the learner recall this information, solve this problem type, reproduce this answer under controlled condition? That model served us reasonably well in a pre-internet or a pre-AI world. But I think your research that you have done that sits right at the center of AI in education. From where you stand as both as an academic and learning designer, how fundamentally does AI challenge the purpose of assessment itself? Are we looking at a reform or are we looking at a complete rethink?
That's a great question to start with. And I'd say It's a rethink, not a reform. But the real issue is not what people think it is. Everyone frames that like AI is making it easy to cheat for students, right? So we need better ways to catch cheating of the learners. I don't think that's the real story. I've seen assessments from three sides: as a school teacher, giving these tests, preparing these tests for my learners, then as a PhD researcher, studying how AI is actually reshaping education and assessments, and now in the industry, building learning products that help learners understand how assessments take place and how we can actually achieve learning objectives. And what I keep coming back to is this: assessment was never really measuring learning, whether it's the pre AI era or the AI era. It was measuring recall under exam conditions. And we treated that as good enough because we didn't really have a better tool. So AI hasn't broken anything really. It just made the cracks impossible to ignore today. If a machine can spit out the answers exactly as a student would, then I don't think that assessment has served its purpose. So it's with zero understanding. And that tells you that the test was never really testing for understanding that it needs to. So the entire fundamental of assessments needs to be re-understood by the teachers as well as the system. So for me, this isn't let's redesign assessment for the AI era. It's really let's finally ask what we are trying to assess and what we were trying to assess all along, and then design for that. And then organically and naturally, we will have learning solutions and we will be able to cater to all the audiences very smoothly.
Great. I think there's one thing that we all on this podcast can align to, that it's not just about verifiability. We don't need to check if a student or if a learner has learned everything that we wanted it to them. The purpose is application, how quickly or how impactfully they can just apply what they have learned. So on the similar lines, I think, Prasoon, my next question is directed towards you. Because tools like Articulate 360, AI-assisted content creation, adaptive learning platforms, they are changing what's technically possible in how we design and deliver those assessments. And in your experience working with learning teams across organizations, where are you seeing the most meaningful shift happening? And where is the technology still falling short of what educators actually still need and not getting?
So, as Sanskriti mentioned, that many a time assessments become a tool of recall, in which case they may not be very effective because it's a specific condition under which you are, under an exam condition, you are doing those assessments, and maybe that may not transfer to when you actually have to solve that problem in a real life. And before I even answer, how AI or tools around are supporting this whole phenomena of assessment creation, how corporates are doing it now, what are the shifts that we are seeing. The way I have seen assessment is that in absence of a assessment is just one tool through which the expectation is that if you go through assessments, then you are able to understand the material well. Now, assessment may be an exam condition, or they may be these questions that may be part of your regular curriculum. So typically, if you see in an academic setup, you have these exercises. So you read something and you may have to answer a few things. So to me, assessment always have been something that allowed you to kind of find a way backward and see that creates a reason for you to look back at your core text, apply your mind, and then what are the missing pieces in your understanding, whether it's a science situation or more art situation. In both situations, you have to go back to that body of knowledge, and it gives you a chance to go back. But yeah, with the cheating of the pre-GPT world, and now it fails if somebody is trying to not go through the assessment in a proper way, because then at the end of the day, nothing will get transferred to your mind, and you will not end up. You will probably end up not performing too well for wherever you were directed to. However, even before I'll take a little leap and I'll kind of go back in time, and I want to create a little framework which allows us to understand how knowledge has changed. And assessment becomes a part of it. To me, assessment is a transference tool from book, from your reading material to the video you watched. There's one kind of a tool. I won't say it has its own downside, upsides, but it's a powerful tool for somebody to grasp the knowledge that was there in the textbook and transfer it to the mind. Now, very quickly, the start of the human civilization up to year 1990, there was this era where people if you didn't had access to the knowledge, if you didn't had access to books, if you didn't had access to certain input text, it was a very binary world. If you don't have access to it, you will lose out. I remember clearly that when I was in my school, and there was a time if your school might is determined whether your college or your school has Encyclopedia Britannica. And I recall that moment when there was a formal party thrown by our school to celebrate the fact that we have got n number of volumes of Britannica. And in those days, it was if you don't have access to those books, you are out. You miss out in a big way. And then from 90s until 2000, when this whole internet revolution happened, the bottleneck shifted. So suddenly, this quote unquote encyclopedia is available to everybody. All the knowledge on science, geography, English, literature, everything was slowly people have started putting there. And interesting factor was because of that there was a progress in the society, but it was not as rampant as people used to claim pre 90s that I wish I had access to knowledge and I would have rocked the world. Because this whole act of looking at a content and transferring to your mind is where the big differentiator is. This is where people excel or lag. And then when this whole internet era arrived and we benefited, it was not that everybody became wise. So this whole excuse that I didn't have access to very good books was not like universally, it did not change the world universally. And then things moved on from 2000 upwards when this whole revolution of open sourcing happened. It also had its own part in the education also. There were these universities, big universities, they volunteered, they came forward and they made accessible very high quality content, which were earlier in the closed lockers of let's say universities like MIT. All these universities started opening up, they started sharing their course, something that we call as a MOOC revolution. And because of that, definitely people who were very curious and they wanted to learn, they actually excelled forward. And then this whole GPT thing came in. So just after this bad COVID phenomena, this GPT happened. And the premise of GPT now is that you don't even require somebody you're not dependent on you going to somebody to learn. And that has been a great enabler because otherwise, if you had access to best coaching, best teacher, then they were able to interpret the text to you, they were able to give you assessments, and then you turned out very good. You were able to crack your exams just because you joined the right coaching. Self-study was always very difficult, it always has been. Now, what I find amazing in this era of GPT with all its downside, one strong upside is that if you're motivated enough, you can get a huge amount of self-study support. And this spans across. It can be in a corporate setup, it can be in an academic setup. Now, since your question was more about assessment and articulate, I thought this framework is important to understand because, like they say, sometimes you have to look at the history to really understand. Even if you have to connect the dot in future, you have to see a little bit of phenomena that happened. And if you have noticed, I only talked about the body of knowledge, the textbooks and the videos and all things being how they have changed over time. And assessment to me has always been that part which assists the transfer of knowledge to you. You may be benchmarked against various students. You're sitting in an exam hall, you're giving some international exam, national level exam. So those are the moments where you are supposed to apply that knowledge, and across the world, you being questioned and you giving an answer is a proven phenomenon. Even in an interview setup, the interviewer asks you a question and they check your hard skill, your soft skill, and all the good work, all the practice you have done has helped you. Now, jumping on to the very specific question on assessment. Assessments with the technologies that are available around, one of it is Articulate. You can accelerate and amplify your process of generating questions. And that has been a great thing, because I remember that creating great questions have always been a very laborious activity. So it may take you, let's say, 1 month to create a very high quality question back in the days. Now you could do it much faster, unless until we don't get lazy. The thing is that it will give you a very good start point. All the AI tools that are there, the credible ones, including Articulate, they'll help you. So you put your PDF files, you give your context, you will have great assessment coming your way. But laziness is one of the vices which still haunts us. The bottleneck has shifted to laziness, I would say, in terms of people looking at the output and just wishing, okay, can I just go and publish it? So you have to do your job of you're doing your due diligence. Now the corporate aspect is that now you can have this concept of continuous assessment, because now you can quickly create questions of different kinds, and of course Articulate plays a major role in terms of assisting you with that. So you're not bound by just creating a limited set of question bank. You can go put full throttle and create so many questions, and organizations have started asking much better questions now. For example, can this employee solve a customer problem? Can they make right decision under pressure? Those kind of questions. And they're able to ask for these things because thanks to AI, some of these things, if you do it properly, a lot of labor that is required to do it has reduced. And you can actually get a very good quality question by just doing a good maker checker on it. When you talk about Articulate, your personalized assessment, you can generate multiple scenarios. So if you have a decision-making thing to be done, scenarios are very powerful. You can even create and adapt certain question banks, and you can have immediate targeted feedbacks. And that is a big power that I'm seeing that is there with the tools with a lot of AI power, including Articulate. So yeah, in summary, this is how the trend has been, and this is how today we can make use of the tool in a proper way and benefit from it, like most of the organizations have started doing it. So that's my view on it, Tanusha.
Great. I think a wonderful start to this conversation with both of you with your opening things. I think one thing that you clearly demarcated, Prasoon, is the era where having an encyclopedia was celebrated. And we can imagine you being in school and all the celebrations around getting that information in-house. So how crucial it must have been in those days compared to today, where we have everything at the click of our hands, but still nothing is that accurate, or how many times we have to verify it before making such claims. So great start, and I think I'll just move on to Sanskriti quickly for the next question that I have. So Sanskriti, one of the most debated questions in AI and education right now is also one of the most uncomfortable. If a learner can use AI to complete an assignment, answer a quiz, or even generate a project, what exactly are we assessing? And what is your personal framework for thinking about this? And how do we design those assessments that remain meaningful and actually difficult to gain, even in an AI-rich environment?
I really like the wording of this question as uncomfortable, because the more uncomfortable it is, the more we want to talk about it, or we need to talk about it. So I would look at it through two lenses. With my experience as an assistant professor and my current work as an instructional designer, where I create AI training materials for teachers. So in academia, I saw how the assessment depended on the final product or the artifact, whether it was an essay or a presentation or a project or maybe a quiz score of the learners. But AI has made it very clear that a polished final product is no longer enough the evidence of learning. What is the evidence of learning? The process. What was your thought process behind that? What were the mistakes that you did? What were the mistakes that you felt that you can work on, and how did you work upon that? Your iterations and so on. And then I moved to the corporate learning experience, where the same issue appears, but a bit differently. So we are usually not asking, can someone produce a document? We are asking, can they make the right decision on the job? Can a teacher design better lessons? Or can a manager handle a difficult conversation? Can an employee apply a policy in a messy real life situation through those learner experiences? So, my framework is this, that meaningful assessment has to test what the learner can understand, judge, transfer, and defend. So it's kind of like a whole process that we need to understand through this framework. For example, in the university setting, instead of asking students to submit a generic research paper, which has been the age-old, turning in assignments, I would ask them to bring an AI-generated draft because I know that they would be doing the back end of it, like automatically when they hear that they have an assignment. So what they have to do is they have to bring in that AI generated draft, critique its assumptions that the AI has, or you can just bring in different drafts that have been created by different AI or different models, right? Identify the missing evidence that you feel there is, revise one section, and then explain your decision either through a short viva or a reflection. That tests disciplinary understanding, not just the output, which was the final artifact I was talking about. Then for a quiz, I would move some questions away from recall, as I mentioned in the first answer, towards diagnosis. So I would say, here's a flawed answer generated by AI. What is wrong with it? You tell me. What would you change and why? This is much harder to fake because the learner has to recognize the quality and the reasoning behind it. So coming to the project-based courses, I would assess the checkpoints, the problem framing, the sources that they chose, the prompts that they used with the AI, the revisions that they made, and the rationale behind their final decisions. So the grade should not only sit on the final submission, and my rubric was designed in a very similar way using that particular framework. Now, coming to the corporate teacher training that I am currently doing, I would design assessment around classroom transfer. For instance, rather than asking the teachers to define AI literacy or maybe AI or generative AI, I might ask them to evaluate 2 AI-generated lesson plans for the same topic and would ask them which one is more age-appropriate, which one has a weaker pedagogy, where are the risks of bias or hallucinations, how would it adapt it to their particular students? How would they cater to their particular learners or their particular context? Another example would be, I would give teachers a real life scenario. A student submits the work that may have been AI generated or AI assisted. What should the teacher do? The assessment should look at their reasoning, the fairness, the policy, the conversation strategy, evidence, and how they preserve learning rather than simply punish the tool use that, you can't use it at all. In industry, this is the kind of performance that we care about. Can someone use tools responsibly, ethically, make good judgments, and explain their choices under real constraints? So I do not think that the future is AI-proof assessment. That may be the wrong goal for us where we are right now. So the goal is assessment that is AI-aware and learning-centered. We should assess the human capabilities around the tool, whether we are using a generative AI tool or we're using tools like Articulate. So critical thinking, the context awareness, the ethical judgment, revision, AI and human factor together, the explanation and transfer is what matters the most. So AI is forcing us to admit that many assessments were easy to game even before AI. Now we have an opportunity to design better ones with AI through that human in that loop. So this is where I stand with the personal framework that I have for this question.
Great. I think thanks for sharing that, Sanskriti, because for many of our viewers, this could also give them another insight or another parallel to what they have been doing and how they can improve their own personal frameworks as well. So, Prasoon, coming to you from a platform and technology perspective, how can organizations, maybe education institutions or enterprises, how can they use this data to make assessments more intelligent? And what are the practical barriers that may stop them from doing so?
Before I answer that, I would want to reflect on what Sanskriti mentioned. And so somebody told me once that there are 2 ways to approach coming from the Japanese war systems, that you have karate and you have judo. So the basic premise of karate is that if somebody puts a force on you, you put another equal force on him, and whoever has harder force wins. So what people are struggling right now is that karate approach, where they're saying, okay, I'll not allow AI to be in my system. How can students use it? Look at this bunch of guys, how unethical they are using AI. So that's the karate approach. I won't say it will be totally wrong, but always more elegant has been the judo approach, wherein you take the force of somebody and use it back on him only. That's the reason monks have been using it, because they were supposed to be non-violent primarily. So and that turns out to be a very beautiful approach in various situations, where like Sanskriti mentioned that, okay, let them come with whatever they can, ask them to encourage them to use various models, come with it. But then the judo is that you look at it now and now think backward towards the text and explain a few things, critique it at least, figure out where the gaps are. So we're kind of leveraging on, rather than fighting it, you are amplifying it in a tune such that your objectives are still met. Now, so very good point. I think it's a very rational approach, and it's such a new thing, this AI. People are dealing with it, and I'm sure at some point they realize that you can't really force it the karate way. You have to have some judo techniques there. And long back, television, Tanusha, maybe you have come from a generation which is a little different than mine, at least. It had another alternative name, which used to be known as idiot box. So there's this name for TV, and many times parents will use it, you don't get stuck on an idiot box. Now, television was never bad, but the only flaw was that with screen also, that we today have on a mobile phone, the kind of content you are consuming, right? If you're consuming a very informative content which can help your work tomorrow, it's not bad. And yeah, it does allow a lot of entertainment. So same thing here, that it has been kind of labeled as either demonizing the AI side people are doing, or they're saying, oh man, this is magic. So you have to be real, and right approach has to be used. I mean, it's not gonna go backward, and I mean, this is gonna stay here. AI and more AI will come in, and we have to cope with it. Now, your question was about how organizations can use assessment data more intelligently, or how they're using it, and what are the barriers to that. Any data is fine, as long as you have the refinery to process it. So far, assessment has only been seen for a very specific end of measuring scores and completion. And the premise has been that if you score, let's say 95% on something, maybe you're very good. And if you're scoring low, you may be bad in that scale. But that is flawed, and we have seen even before AI, we all knew it, because like Sanskriti mentioned, sometimes you may be measuring someone's capability to just remember things. People are able to dodge the paper by some people have very good memory, so they can just go ahead and give your answers, but they may not have really absorbed it internally. That problem always was there, and that still remains. But the gold mine of assessment data that we have today can answer so many things. It is so easy to set up now, thanks to generative AI. You can bring in the analytical wisdom very quickly. Earlier, the bars used to be high to do analytics. You would have a separate team or somebody who has gone through a course on data analytics. Now, organization I'm seeing around me, so many of my customers, they are able to get answers for, which skills are consistently weak across a certain department. It could be a insurance firm trying to measure, which zone is actually weak. It's much easier to detect that now. And if you see, you may ask why, how would that really be easy now? The thing is that assessment, let's take a multiple choice question. Earlier, you would just be able to figure out what is the right question that somebody has chosen, or the wrong answer if he has chosen. That's the only thing. But thanks to the technology available, you can even capture micro informations like, what was the first choice somebody made? Is he just guessing? If you are time stamping how somebody is answering a question, you can say so many things about it. So suddenly this whole learning analytics has become much easier, and some of the progressive companies have started adopting it. So you could also answer questions like, which learning activity actually improves performance, because you imagine you have an assessment, you have all the results stored there. You can link back to a performance management system, and then you can kind of correlate very easily that which of the activities are actually leading to performance gain. So the whole idea behind assessment was to really check that when you go in front of your customer, or when you go and sit in front of the computer and start writing code for your company, how good you are going to be. You wanted to predict that, you wanted to ensure that. So that all data is so easy to process now. The only thing is that systems need to be catching those signals. Earlier, people were not catching the signal. Why? Because it was very costly to process that. So what I'm seeing the change is that you now have these assessment systems which have so much of data around how people are. They really timestamp many things of your behavioral things. So in the same test, you have so much of information. So that is the micro level, where each assessment can give you a lot. And then now another thing that has become very easy is that when you pose a question to a person, you not only are testing the person, but you're also testing a question. Let me explain. So imagine there are 4 levels of hardness. Let's say 3 level: medium, easy, medium, high hardness. Many times it happens that the person who created the paper or assessment may think that the high is actually high, but you may realize that many people are answering it. So I have seen even in our product, there are these recalibrations. So if you have an assessment thrown at 1,000 people, even your questions will also get recalibrated. You will say, you know what, this doesn't look like a high intensity question. It's a medium intensity or low intensity question, because people are able to answer it. So you are able to then look at, even question your question banks, and then you can go ahead and create further interventions. For example, you may see that now, okay, people have this kind of area they have really mastered. I can quickly go and create now different kind of interventions. And when you bind all these things with a personalized learning path, you're able to identify skill gaps for real, because assessment give you all of that. Another magical thing has been the descriptive question. In past, if you have to evaluate, MCQs were cool because you can automate, but descriptive always had that because you had to bring in a human. Now there are setups and systems which can at very high accuracy even do the descriptive testing, whether all the 4 main ideas that you wanted to cover in this answer are being covered or not. So those are another great evolutions that are happening in the assessment area. So the direction I'm seeing is that learning platforms are now moving from skill intelligence to more predictive learning analytics. It's happening. And the biggest barrier, like I said, is not technology right now, it's data quality. So any assessment that only measures memory will not gonna help much. And like they say, technology just amplifies whatever we choose to measure. So in summary, idea is that data has to be seen differently, capture more signals, and identify the barriers people are facing through the assessment reports, and create newer intervention. It could be adaptive test, it could be scenario-based test, it could be assessment, or even going back and fixing your body of knowledge. Therefore, I always see them together, because assessment is a tool to check your body of knowledge. So sometimes if the issues in body of knowledge, I've seen this in one of the customers where they had a low score report, and we were made to analyze just to help them think through. We realized that the gap was not in the assessment, it was in the body of knowledge. People, the kind of question that were being asked, they were not being trained about it in the classroom, or even whatever PDFs that were available were not very lucid about those things. So yeah, those are the things that are important if you have to use as a corporate or academia this data intelligently and identify the learning barriers.
Great. I think thanks for sharing all those valuable information with us, Prasoon, because now I would again like to bring your focus back on Sanskriti. I think because you have specifically worked on teacher training and higher education in your career, and that is a dimension that often gets left out of the AI and assessment conversation generally. Because the reality is, even the best designed AI integrated assessment frameworks, they're only as good as the educators who implement it. And what does it actually take to train the educators to design assessments that work in that AI age? And what do you think, where do most institutions get this wrong?
It's a very important question to ask, first of all. And yes, many institutions do get it wrong. And I would answer this from my own arc. So I started as a school teacher, then I did my master's in education, and then PhD, moved into academia, and now I work in industry designing teacher training experiences around AI. So I have been the educator being trained. So it's like a full circle for me. And I also had the time to think about how to train other educators. One thing I've been thinking about is the analogy that Prasoon mentioned about karate and judo. And I think that that's really interesting if you look at it that way in terms of institutions. So I think that many institutions are still taking the karate approach to AI, which is, I have heard that block it, detect it, fight it, or control it. Control it for the teachers, for the students, for the administrative staff, and so on. But AI, we know, is here to stay. So educator training has to be more like judo, where, as Prasoon has mentioned, how we understand this force, how we work around it, work with it intelligently using our own intelligence, and redirect it towards learning. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, that is to maximize the learning experiences. So that means that we have to stop treating AI as an automatic suspect. We need to let learners, be in corporate or in academia, use it and assess what they actually do with it. Can they catch its mistakes? Can they push back? Can they improve on it? And can they explain where the tool was useful and where the human judgment had to take over? So, in many ways, that's a harder skill, I think, than writing from scratch because it requires discernment. So, I've been having a lot of talks with people wherein we do discuss that post the AI era, it has become more difficult to write because you have to understand how to balance, how to strike a balance when you are dealing with information that's there with you, which is so beautifully explained, and where does that human judgment come, and how often does it come, and why and how it is important. So most institutions would get this wrong because they start with the tools, whether it is any generative AI tool or any kind of tool that helps them create learning experiences. They say that, okay, here is the AI platform, here are the features, here are the new updates that have come that have come in, here is your workshop or your CPD or your training, here are the do's and don'ts. But educators do not just need tool training, they need assessment design training. This I realized when I was doing my field work in my PhD as well, when I was dealing with pre-service teachers, and I was understanding their knowledge, their attitude, and their practice towards AI tools in general. So they understand that AI is here, but they don't understand where their role comes. How can they have all those three domains of learning in place? How can they show the cognitive understanding? How they can show the affective understanding and the psychomotor learning? How they can do that in that kind of time frame? So that is what is important, and that is what is missing out, I think, from most institutions. And also, I would like to add that the most useful experience I had, hands-on in this area was when I went for Google for Education Certified Innovator Academy in Stockholm earlier this year. What stood out was that it was not tool first at all. It was design thinking, the approach of design thinking. We had to identify a real problem from our own context, be it India, be it any other country in the world. Sit with it, get mentorship and peer feedback, prototype a solution. You can fail also, and then you can iterate on that. This is exactly what AI assessment training needs. Start with the problem, not the platform. What are we trying to know about the learner? What is the assessment? And what is assessment a means to? Is it measuring recall, reasoning, transfer, judgment, collaboration, or performance improvement? Once that is clear, once that learning objective is clear, then we can ask where AI and technology would help. I'm sure it will help, but we have to answer those questions first. And technology can help in ways traditional assessment could not often do. We have seen that. As Prasoon was also talking about, it can capture micro information about the whole entire learning process. We get timestamps, we get the drafts even, the revisions, the choices made, the feedback cycles, the hesitation points also, and the patterns of engagement with the tool. So, with learning analytics, we can begin to ask better questions. Which learning activity actually improved their performance? Which feedback helped them? And where did the learner struggle? Did the assessment only produce a score, or did it generate evidence that helps teaching and learning improve? These questions are far more important, which the institutions should, start asking to understand the success or failure in the AI era. And I've seen tools like Articulate which have started moving in this direction with branching scenarios and adaptive checkpoints and whatnot. And they understand, or they help in how a learner walks through something, not just whether they land on the right answer or not. It's not just about the final score. So that kind of design is closer to real thinking, in my opinion, because it captures the judgment in action. So for me, educator training in the AI age has to bring together three things: strong fundamentals of assessment, design thinking, and intelligent use of data. So, having sat on both sides, as one designing the course and one studying how AI reshapes it, I would want more institutions to make that shift, not blocking AI altogether, but making good use of it, something that we can actually see, discuss, and grade and debate about it.
Great, great. I think the most foremost point that you have brought up, Sanskriti, is we can't let people stop using AI, and there is enough noise on the internet and around the world about AI in general. But still, the most impactful and the most detailed conversation that still needs to be started is about the ethical usage or the good usage, in simple words, of artificial intelligence. I think this conversation would really help our viewers understand that. Now, moving to the final question, and I would like both of your perspectives on this. If you were advising an institution or an organization that is just beginning to rethink its assessment strategy for the AI age, what is the single most important shift in mindset they need to make before they touch any technology or policy? We'll start with you, Prasoon.
Okay, so I think in a way, the advice will be like summarizing some of the key points that we talked about here. One is that let the AI wave come. You don't have to really resist it that bad, either in academia and or corporate. Of course, there will be ethical concern. I'm not saying just have something, but be ready for the big mind shift that is required, which is your idea of the future workforce. And future is now, by the way, because AI is here in a very amplified form right now. It is affecting the entire. You're seeing so much things happening in the industry right now. Some things are very disruptive. So the readiness that we require is no more about finishing a course or recalling. Have those people who can think, who can perform the job. Where they will work in consonance with AI. AI as your peer, as your resource, as your junior is a reality. And we have to work in consonance. And the way you're assessing people has to change. The kind of body of knowledge that you were initially posing at people, that is changing, because much of the knowledge can now be imparted through properly designed AI mechanisms. So the idea is go with this flow and create a workforce which is very skill focused, and skill will keep changing. So you require people who can really adapt fast, and not only people. That's what each company that has to survive will have to do. You have to keep changing your shape. It's a very strong moving frontier these days. So create some awesome assessments using whatever technologies. Of course, Articulate is one of the great technologies you may plan to invest in. But that would be my evening message to this closing question.
Great. I think you didn't use the word advice. You just said it as a message, but I think still people would take it as an advice and understand the impact that AI is going to create. Not in the future, but today, like as we speak. So over to you, Sanskriti, with the closing question.
I think that if I had to boil it down to one shift, I would say that we have to start asking, what does it even mean to know something? I would be very philosophical here. Now that knowing and looking it up have basically merged, so we need to start asking that question. Because if we think about it, for most of the human history, knowledge was scarce. And so we built entire institutions, schools, entire industries around verifying who had it. So if the thing that we built an assessment to protect no longer exists in the same form, the assessment itself has to be rebuilt from a different question entirely. And I think that we have had a good conversation around it, and it was really eye-opening for me, I think, and for the I'm sure for the viewers as well. I think that L&D has an odd advantage over the traditional education because L&D was never really obsessed with the mark sheet in the first place. It was always caring about, can this person actually do the job, not can they recall the manual. So I think that tools like Articulate and other tools, in a strange way, were already halfway there by all of these features that they have, the branching scenarios, the decision-based paths and everything. That's assessment by behavior, not by memory. And that's what I've been reiterating in my answers as well. So my real answer would be that before any institution touches a policy or a piece of technology, they need to sit with a slightly uncomfortable question. If a machine can now produce the right answer instantly, what is uniquely, irreplaceably human about the way we want our learners to think? Everything else, the tools, the technology, the rubrics, the platform, can wait. They can and should be built backward from that answer, not the other way around. So that would be my closing remark on that question.
A very good closing remark. Very nice. I love it.
Thank you.
Great. So that brings us to the end of this podcast. A huge thank you to Sanskriti and Prasoon for such a rich and refreshingly honest conversation today. What this discussion has surfaced is something that the learning world has been circling around for a while but rarely says directly. We have spent years perfecting the machinery of assessment without ever really questioning what the machinery is supposed to produce. AI did not just crack it, it just removed any remaining reason to pretend it was solid. And that is actually an opportunity for us, because the question that is now sitting on every educator's desk and every L&D leader's agenda: what does it mean to truly know if someone has learned something? This is the most important question that industry has ever had to answer seriously. So thank you to everyone listening. If this has sparked something new for you, a question, a discomfort, an idea worth chasing, that is exactly what a good conversation should do. This is Tanusha from Stratbeans. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, Prasoon and Sanskriti, for joining us today.